Good morning, everyone, and we're starting this morning the portion of Korach. I'm studying the Rebbe's talk from selections from Likutei Sichos, the first talk. A very short introduction. The name of the portion is after a man who was a Levite, and he rebelled against his cousin Moshe and Aaron, together with 250 men, as well as Datan and Aviram, the troublemakers throughout history. From the beginning of Shemot, as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu is growing up, they are the one who is telling Moshe, we know that you killed an Egyptian, and they go into Pharaoh to report. Moshe has to run away. These are the same two men who have throughout, they are the one who disobey God with the manna. God says, do not live for the next day. God says, do not go and gather manna on Shabbat, and they do the opposite. These are, unfortunately, part of the scenery of every Jewish community. This most of the portion is dealing with those men, and we call it Korach because he's the first. Actually, it's his wife more than him. She's the one who drove him in, pushed him for this rebellious and war because of jealousy of Moshe's wife, as the Medrash tells us. But the outcome, and there was another man, On Ben Pelet, another leader from the tribe of Reuben, whose wife the one to prevent him from the war and saved his life, actually. So there are many hidden lessons, but we're going to concentrate on main focus. I'm going to start reading, but the rest I'm going to share with you a summary so we can cover the entire topic with a short period. Seder Olam. Seder Olam is a medrash, very ancient, a chronology of the world's history as it concerns the Jewish people relates that the uprising of Korach and his company against Moshe and Aaron took place after the spies returned with their negative report regarding Eretz Israel. As support for this thesis, it cites the complaint of Datan and Aviram. Datan and Aviram in the Torah says, you brought us out of Egypt to kill us in the desert, and you did not bring us to a land flowing with milk and honey. The protest indicates that they were speaking after the decree that came as punishment for the sin of the spies. You will perish in this desert. Seder Olam summary. Seder Olam says, Korach, rebellious, happened when? After the spies came back, got punished to spend 40 years. And now Korach rebels. Now, Seder Olam's proof for that is when the Tanya and Aviram to rebel against Moshe, they say, you did not bring us to our land flowing with milk and honey. It could have not happened any time earlier. It must have happened only after they were punished for 40 years to spend in the desert and never entered the Holy Land. Now they have a good claim to Moshe. Why did you take us out? We're going to die in here. Ask the Rebbe, I don't understand. Why is this that Korach waited for so long? This is a year and a half after they have left Egypt. The spies came back on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, a year and a half after they left Egypt. The entire year and a half, all the reasons they had, either against Aaron's leadership, which he was appointed, could be immediately after they left Egypt, but definitely at the dedication of the temple, which happened 6 months earlier. Also, a year and 6 months, a year early, more than a year earlier. Even if as Rashi says that they rebelled against what angered them was Elitzaphan. Elitzaphan ben Uziel was appointed the leader of Levi tribe. Says the Rebbe, it happened when they counted the Levi tribe. When they counted the Levi tribe at the beginning of Bamidbar, that's when Moshe appoints a leader for the entire Levi tribe of Kehat family within the Levi. So that happened on the 1st of Iyar. First of Iyar, now it's already after Tisha B'Av, meaning you have Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, and Av. You have 4 months, 5 months later. What is it, the trigger that made them rebel against Moshe, that now they have a complaint? Why Aaron is the leader? Why Moshe is the leader? You're appointing people. It's a family business. What do you call when you... Nepotism. This should have happened way earlier. Says the Rebbe, that the reason is, what was the big mistake of the spies? I'm giving you a summary. What was the biggest mistake of the spies? The spies, according to Kabbalah, refused to enter the Holy Land because they did not want to separate themselves from God. In the desert, they studied Torah all day. They had no worry about dry cleaning. They have no worry about ailment. They have no worry about paying taxes. They had no worry about tilling the field, about harvesting, about praying for rain. They had food. They had a good life, and they had Moshe with them. All they did is study Torah. They refused to get busy with performing the mitzvot. The mitzvot involve action with physical objects. You cannot do mitzvah in giving tithe. You cannot bring a sacrifice unless you pay for the animal. You cannot do a tzedakah. You cannot celebrate Shabbat unless you cook for Shabbat. They did not want to get involved in the physical universe. They wanted to remain spiritual being connected to Moshe through the study of Torah. That was the mistake. That's why they said that the land eats up its inhabitants. What they refer to in a spiritual sense is, if you get involved in business, day-to-day commerce, you will go away from God. You will get eaten up spiritually, because you'll have to cheat. You'll have to lie. You'll have to skip prayers. You'll have to let go of kosher, because the non-kosher food is much less expensive. In other words, the challenges of keeping the mitzvot, of the actual mitzvot, is a very difficult that most people cannot stand by it, and therefore they will be totally removed from God. So let's stay in the desert, study Torah, no worry about tithes, no worry about sabbatical, no worry about bringing sacrifice, but with our own money. They had plenty of animals. They had everything they needed. Ali, do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Now, yes, Leon. Huh?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to everybody.
Let's go. Back, so you had said in the past that when you think you've got everything set up so that you can study without interruption, you will be interrupted.
Of course. That's it.
Do you think that's
Except in the desert. But you see, in the desert, they got in trouble all the time. Even if it was,
Today, in today's world, is that not a carry to?
Of course, and multiplied by many times. Let's get back to the mistake of the spies. God said, you know what's most important? Action. God wants us to make a dent in the universe. He wants us to impact the universe. He wants us to get involved in challenges. You have a competition and you will not lie. You have a Shabbat and you will not walk on Shabbat, even though Shabbat is the busiest day of the week. You will be keeping kosher. You will refrain from doing work or making contract on the holiday of Passover, because God said so. In other words, involving ourselves in the physical universe, mundane, day to day, is the target, is the purpose. The Torah is the fuel. The Torah gives us direction. The Torah gives us an island where we can refocus. The Torah is there. Gadol Talmud shemevi lidei maaseh. The greatness of the Torah, which is the greatest gift that God gave us, the greatest mitzvah, we bond ourselves with God, but it is because it's a vehicle that gets us closer to God through action. Did you understand that? This was the episode of the spies. Now we can understand what happened to Korach. Korach knew that Moshe is far greater than he is, that Aaron is much closer to God. Why? Because God speaks directly to Moshe. God gave the Torah to Moshe. Moshe is the one who is teaching the Torah. But now that I have discovered that it's all about action, so I understand that when it comes to the hierarchy of teaching Torah, Moshe is the highest. He is teaching Aaron. Then Aaron put to the side, and Aaron's sons come, and then the elders, and then the leaders of tribes, and then the women, and then the men. That makes sense that there is an hierarchy in interpreting, studying, and understanding the Torah. We all know that our level of intellect, the IQ, varies from one person to the other. But when it comes to action, came Korach and said, there is no difference. All it needs is that you recite Kiddush Friday night. All I need is for you to give tithe from the field. How do you do that? Do you need to be an intelligent person? The answer is no. All you have to do is follow instructions. It's a simple instructions how to obey God. God says give tithe, give 10% of your money to tzedakah. It's a very simple way. You make a simple calculation. Don't make it complex. There is no reason. Same is about eating matzah on Passover. Same is about the firstborn in a calf that was born has to be given to a Kohen. A firstborn child, 5 silver shekels given to a Kohen. These are action. If it's action, he says everybody is holy, everybody is equal, the same. Did you understand Korach's complaint? If it's so that Korach was a complaint, what does Moshe answer him? Moshe, if you pay attention, and I've spoken this week many, many times, Moshe says to him, Boker veyoda Hashem et asher lo. In the morning, wait till the morning, take your time, and in the morning, God will make known what is right and who should be appropriate. Just a minute. Very good. Harry is a scholar.
Pay attention.
Rashi says, why does he say boker in the morning? Because he was up in hay, as Harry said. Until then, they will have done teshuvah. He's giving them a chance to repent. And the second is, he says to them, just somewhat, can you control the sun? Can you decide tomorrow not to have a morning? Can you make sure the sun is going to rise a little later? Of course not. The one who created daylight and darkness, the one who created nature, is the one who decided who should be the leader. This is Rashi, 2 explanations. Says the Rebbe, there are 2 problems here. First, there are 2 questions the Rebbe is addressing. First question is, they seemingly made a good argument. They said, if it's all about action, why are you separating yourself? And we know that they are incorrect, but we don't know the reason. We don't know the reason. The Rebbe will bring the reason. The second question the Rebbe says, I don't understand. They want to be all equal. Everybody is holy, everybody is equal, but yet they want to be the one to lead. They say, why did you give it to Aaron or to Elitzaphan, to this man, to your cousin? I want it. What do you mean I want it? They didn't come and say, let's abolish leadership, like the communists, all equal, everybody is a comrade. They came and says, why did you do nepotism? Why did you give it to your cousin and to your brother? I want it. And that's why he offered them the Torah, where there is going to be a sign who is going to be chosen by God. So on one hand, they rebel against Moshe's leadership. And if the reason is because action is what counts, everybody is equal when it comes to action, yet they refuse to give up their leadership. They themselves were leaders. They were the head of tribes. They were head of families. They said, we want it, not you. Let's take a vote and not allow you. Right, Harry? Is that correct?
My thinking also is they knew that you had tourists outside, they were not asked to bring it, they were Chayav Misa.
Moshe warned them.
Right.
And yet they refused to obey, to listen, because they all felt maybe they're the one to be chosen by God, right? In other words, there are 2 questions. One is, if their reasoning is that action is what counts, why is it that they're so wrong? And number 2, if they came to rebel against Moshe with the idea that everybody should be treated equally, everybody is close to God equally, how come they refused to relinquish their own leadership? In fact, they wanted the leadership of Aaron to themselves. But based on that, there is no basis for that. Here is the way the Rebbe explains. The Rebbe says that among a society, I'm giving you a summary of this talk. The Rebbe says among society, you must have hierarchy. You must have a head of a family. You must have a decision maker. You must have a leader. You can't have everybody making all the decisions. That did not bother them because they themselves were leaders and they saw the benefit and they knew how important it is. The problem is against Moshe. Moshe was a king. Moshe is considered a king. The difference, the Alter Rebbe explained, the difference between a king and his pupil, versus other leaders is day and night. For example, you have a teacher and students. A teacher is feeding information. The student absorbs that, but it doesn't make them incomparable. It's impossible because the student might have a higher IQ than the teacher. It just so happens the teacher is familiar with the material. But if the student has knowledge in other material, he can be the teacher to that teacher, and the teacher becomes students. In addition, the student may absorb the topic so well, better than the teacher. You may remember it longer. Same as a father and son, mother and daughter. There is an hierarchy. You must respect your parents. There is no doubt. But that level, as we mature, is kind of shrinking and coming close to one another. The only distinction, the only difference is a king. The Torah tells us that a man who raises his hands next to a king in a disrespect deserves to die. In other words, there are no leeways. There are no second chances. A king is like the heart of the Jewish people, and any touch of the heart affects the entire body. The man can get sick, God forbid. If the heart stops beating, even if it slows down, every part of the body feels it. You can concentrate, you can walk, you can think, the blood is racing, there's blood pressure, etc. Unlike a finger, another body part that can be fixed, can be replaced. Not so with the heart. The king is the heart of the Jewish people. In that way, the reverence towards Moshe was so great that everything the Jewish people receive comes from Moshe. They got their sustenance, manna. They got their drink, wells. They got their protection, the clouds of pillar by night and a fire by night and a cloud of glory by day. They got their direction. They got all those sustenance and goods. In fact, even when they messed up, who's the one who defended them? Moshe. Moshe is the true definition of a king like never before. There is no other king that was as perfect as Moshe Rabbeinu, like in everything else. And therefore, that's what they could not stand. They came to Moshe and says, as long as you're giving us the Torah, you deserve, because Torah is the most important, the most valuable, you deserve to be the king. But now that you're all about action, you're a nation of action, you don't deserve to be the king. You should be like a leader that teaches us Torah, like a teacher and a student. And we can question you, we can disagree, and we can say we don't see it this way. Just like students in a class. They can argue with the teacher, and they can debate the teacher, and they can disagree with the teacher, and sometimes it might be correct. With Moshe, there is no such thing. He's the king. And therefore, the Torah he gave us, it's like a king providing sustenance, and there is no questioning, and there is no doubting. That's what they were against. And that's why Korach received such hard punishment. It's not just separating himself from another leader, it's cutting himself off of the Jewish people, because Moshe, as the king, is the only channel through which God is delivering food, sustenance, spirituality, Torah, as well as teshuvah. That's why they were wrong. And that's it. Here is the Rebbe's explanation. And that's where Moshe says in the morning you'll be known to you. Says the Rebbe, of course, action is most important. But we see in the Torah that action alone is insufficient. It has to come with kavana. Kavana means concentration. That's why the term is Torah, study of Torah, and Maasim Tovim, good deeds. Why does it say Tovim, good deeds? It should say Maasim, Torah or Maasim. When you say Torah, you refer to the Torah of Moshe, right? You don't say Torah Hashem. You don't say Torah Moshe, Torah. Maasim. Maasem means action. Why do you say Maasim Tovim? Torah or Maasim Tovim? It's everywhere. Anytime the Torah is referring to Torah and good deeds, it says Torah and Maasim Tovim. So because there is Maasim, there is action that's not good. When you don't have the right intention, you have an ulterior motive, then what happens? What happens if I did not steal your money because you're watching? I really wanted it, but I didn't do it because you're watching. I serve God, but it wasn't for the right reason. Not because God said so, it's because I'm afraid to go into jail. What happens to those good deeds, to those deeds? They remain in this universe, as we'll be studying, those of us who come study Tanya. And later on, at a certain point when we did the same mitzvah, without an ulterior motive, just for God's sake, it gathers all of the actions that were similarly done and elevates them. In other words, good deeds are done only when they're done with the proper kavanah. Therefore, the greater the person, the greater the kavanah, the higher the mitzvah goes. So it goes both ways. If between Torah and mitzvot, the spies have taught us that mitzvot, action, is the real reason we are here, and therefore we must enter the Holy Land and face challenges. On the other hand, mitzvot alone, without the proper kavanah, the intention, is not sufficient. So if someone forced me to eat matzah or celebrate Passover, I fulfill God's mitzvot. I did my duty, but it does not elevate to God. It's not close. Only when a year later or a couple of years later I'll do it for the right reason, then I will be elevating. That's why the Mishnah, by the way, says, Antignos ich socho. Antignos, I believe, is in the first chapter of Ethics of Our Father. He says, do the mitzvot for ulterior motive, but over time it will make you do it for the right, without ulterior motive. Mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. From doing it for ulterior motive, obviously, eventually it will bring you to doing it for no ulterior motive. In other words, the goal is to do the mitzvot in a good way, with no ulterior motive. Right now, I tell someone, I'll pay you money to come to Minyan. I'll pay you money to keep kosher. I'll give you a free meal if you eat Shabbat, if you keep Shabbat. Right now, they do it for ulterior motive, but it will eventually lead them to doing it for no ulterior motive, and then it will elevate all the deeds that he did in a similar mitzvah, in the same mitzvah, that were done for ulterior motive. Now we understand why Moshe says to them Boker. Boker, the first is Moshe says, as Rashi said, and Harry says, that in the morning, hopefully by then they'll do teshuvah. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, you're wrong, because God wants a king to rule. And the king is the channel, the conduit that will deliver all your sustenance. The second one, so therefore they should do teshuvah. He waited. He says, let's be patient. Let's take time to rethink your situation. The second opinion, the second idea is, he says to them, I understand you don't agree with this, but just like God who created the heaven and earth, and he put a system of solar system, and you cannot touch it or change it. You cannot make sunrise a little later or earlier. Therefore, God says action counts, but with the action there has to be the motive, the kavanah, the intention, and in that way there are levels. And therefore Moshe is far greater, and you will never reach that level. You can reach your teacher's level, you can reach your parents' level, you may surpass them, but you will never reach the level of kavanah that Moshe Rabbeinu had. Why? Because God chose. That's the system God created. Says the Rebbe, did I make myself clear? Says the Rebbe, this is an answer for different groups of people. You have some people who believe in the study of Torah, only study Torah all day. You have people who believe in good deeds and they have no time to study Torah. It doesn't work like that, because as soon as you put your mind into it, you'll make mistakes. The way God wants, and Moshe is teaching us, is both of them must be combined. We must study Torah so we have a better kavanah and serve God in the action into the proper way. But at the same time, we're not allowed to get lost in the study of Torah. We need to go out and serve God in with the good deeds, and we must be making good deeds. Ma'asim tovim, deeds that have kavanah, because if they have no kavanah, they are not ma'asim tovim, they are only ma'asim, they are only action, and it will take time. Hopefully it will be around to fix it and elevate it back, bring back the engine and connect those cars back to the engine, to the train, to follow and reach out God. And says the Rebbe, this is the reason. Now we understand this Torah portion appear immediately after the story of the spies. They did not rebel against Moshe until the story of the spies. And now we understand what their mistake was, not about leadership. They knew needs to be hierarchy, but against the leadership of what Moshe is, the conduit that delivers all God's blessings. They said they deserve to be that close to God without Moshe. And Moshe says to them, in the morning you will see, hopefully you'll realize that together with action there has to be kavana. And the kavana is also counts. Without kavana, it stays here and it needs to be pushed one day back. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who helps you with kavana, because he's the one who gave us the Torah, in which you find all the kavana for all the good deeds.
He's the king of kavana.
He's the king of kavana.
My father said that one of the biggest things that God said about was machlokas,
Right.
arguments among people.
I think I shared last night that the only day, according to many, not everybody, that there was no manna sent on earth is the day of Korach, and is that night when he says in the morning. I think I showed it to you. The Maharam Shif said, I said last night, that the Maharam Shif said that Moshe Rabbeinu, why did he say morning? He said to Korach and his men, you know, the manna appears to righteous men next to the door, and middle people across the street, and wicked people across outside the camp. Let's see tomorrow morning where the manna will fall. If it falls next to my door, I'm righteous. Even next to your door, you're righteous. What? And that's why I said to him, in the morning, God will show who he chose. What happened that morning? According to many, there was no manna. Even though during the golden calf there was manna, during the rebellions to go back to Egypt and the spies, all the time there was manna. The only time there was no manna, according to many opinions, is this morning when there was a war against Moshe. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.